Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and today we just got some news about changes for the Atlas in the upcoming future of Path of Exile. This is the expansion for Conquerors of the Atlas. That's the official title of this thing. Now those of you who are maybe new to PoE or you've never been through one of these annual expansions, essentially the way how it breaks down is this. Every year in Path of Exile, there are a minimum of 4 leagues. Those are typically quarterly events that last about 3 months. And with every new league, there are updates. You can see that right next to me. The title or the name of the next league update with the patch 3.9 will be called Metamorph League. In addition to that, every year, Path of Exile drops down a larger piece of content that's an update, generally about once a year, that they'll call an expansion. And that expansion for this year is called Conquerors of the Atlas. The changes that are coming to the end game of Path of Exile are all going to be included in the Conquerors of the Atlas expansion that is dropping simultaneously with 3.9 Metamorph League, which is December 13th PC worldwide. So all that as the groundwork of when this is happening and the timeline for how GGG releases these things. These are the specific changes that are going to reshape did you get it? There was a PoE pun there. Reshape the way how we actually interact with the end game. So there are some very important announcements as well as some theory crafting that needs to be done moving forward, starting December 13th with the way how we're all going to approach endgame and Path of Exile for at least the next year. So again, if you're wondering, is this something that's just going to be coming with 3.9 and then things will change in 3.10? Yes, the league will change in 3.10, but the way how mapping is going to work is going to be tied to Conquerors of the Atlas, and this is going to last for the duration of the year. So, let's jump right into the announcement. The Atlas of Worlds will be undergoing a number of changes in the Conquerors of the Atlas expansion. Today, we're going to detail several new systems and clarify what will happen to any existing systems affected by these changes. The first thing you'll notice when opening your Atlas that you no longer start at the corners where the Tier 1 maps were previously. Instead, you'll now be starting next to the map device in the center of the Atlas. The Zana questline in which you pursue the Shaper and Elder throughout the Atlas has been replaced with a brand new story immediately following these events. The Atlas has been divided up into 8 regions. As you can play through each region, completing maps as you go, you'll have the opportunity to fight new endgame bosses who take up a citadel on a specific map within a region. Upon socketing a watchstone, the associated region will be upgraded, increasing the tier of all maps within that region and revealing previously hidden maps. Defeat each of the conquerors and you'll be able to fully upgrade any given region, resulting in every map in that region ranging from tier 14 to tier 16. Repeatedly defeating conquerors will drop additional watchstones, eventually allowing you to upgrade all 8 regions. One neat result of this is that this means that all unique maps will be able to drop at a much higher tier than previously possible. Sextants are no longer applied to individual maps on your Atlas. Instead, sextants are applied to watchstones and will affect whichever region that watchstone is currently socketed into. This means that each region can be affected by up to 4 sextants at any one time. You will also have the ability to move watchstones between regions freely. Additionally, sextant modifiers are no longer shared between one another. Instead, apprentice, journeyman, and master cartographer sextants each have their own pool of modifiers that they can apply to maps. Naturally, the rarer the sextant, the higher quality of modifiers it can apply. Shaper and Elder influence are no longer found on your Atlas. Shaper and Elder items will still be accessible through their usual means, such as some league rewards, divination cards, and drops from the Shaper and Elder encounters and guardians. You will occasionally be able to obtain maps that have Shaper and Elder influence through the use of scarabs, as well as maps that have a modifier which applies influence to the area. Shaper strongholds will also cease to exist. Shaper's orbs and Elder orbs will no longer be obtainable and existing orbs will be destroyed. Unshaping orbs and cartographer seals will no longer be usable. Shaper Guardian maps are no longer found on the Atlas. Instead, you will be able to find them through Zana missions. They will continue to drop their unique items and fragments. Combining each of the Shaper fragments will continue to open portals to the Shaper realm. If you're interested in obtaining the Celestial Hideout, you'll want to do so before these changes, as access to the Shaper encounter is likely to be more difficult and expensive than it is currently. Elder Guardians and the Elder will occasionally replace the map boss of various Zana mission maps. Both Shaper and Elder will have a chance to drop fragments. Combining these fragments will open portals to the Uber Elder encounter. We're very excited about the upcoming changes and boss encounters in the Conquerors of the Atlas expansion. We will likely have additional information to share in the near future, but please let us know if you have any other questions pertaining to existing features and functionality, and we'll do our best to get them answered as soon as we can. Okay, so a few things. There we go. So first off, that's the overview. That's the official statement on the Atlas changes that are coming in PoE Conquerors of the Atlas expansion. A couple of things to note here. First off, yes, there is such a thing as the Celestial Hideout, and you get it by farming the Shaper. So if you want a Celestial Hideout, my best advice for you actually at this point in time right now is to actually log on to Standard, because that's probably where you have most of your currency. Buy up as many fragments as you can for Shaper encounters, and then go take your most busted, best boss-killing particular build and go kill Shaper a whole bunch in order to get the Celestial Hideout, because it's going to be much rarer, and it's not just going to be rarer for 3.9, it's going to be rarer for the foreseeable future, with the end game of Path of Exile now being this, that we'll no longer have quite as easy access to the Shaper and the Elder as we've had before. So if you want the Celestial Hideout unlocked, again, this is a free-to-play game, and these are free in-game MTX, hideout effects that you can have, is to have the Celestial Hideout. You don't have to shell out cash to actually purchase this hideout effect. You can just go farm Shaper and it'll pop up if you farm him enough. So I would highly recommend that you do that if that's something that you want. The next thing to think about is the way how sextants are going to change. Sextants are now going to apply to the whole region. So I think economically, just thinking about PoE economics, again, this isn't actually looking at a live trade league where we're actually seeing things happen, but I think from at least the wording on this, I think what this means is that while sextants across the board should actually drop in their value, because it should mean that more people are going to actually want to use them, so there's less people trading them, if that makes any kind of sense. Their value is actually going to go up across the board, because, well, there's going to be some of them that are rarer and that are going to just simply have better mods available on them, if that makes any kind of sense. So typically what we've got in the meta right now, presently, in the current end game of Path of Exile, we have a lot of sextants that generally don't get used, and a lot of players actually sell off their sextants for chaos orbs in order to simply make currency. A lot of players don't use sextants and don't use juiced up maps with, min-maxing their sextants across the board, and so a lot of players will sell them to other players who will then use them, or to other players who recognize their value and want to hold them. So in other words, what I'm saying is the reason why the value would go down in terms of its price is because everybody wants to hold on to them and use them. However, their value will go up because, depending on the quality of these particular sextants, things are actually going to get much juicier for people who want to do juiced up maps. So that's a long-winded way of saying I think they're going to actually end up being more expensive on the top end and cheaper on the low end. That's my first impression of the way how things are going to shape up for the meta. But I could be totally wrong. I've been totally wrong before, and I'll be totally wrong again. Okay, the last thing to note is that all of these various maps that are included in the region can go up to tier 14 through 16. So this means for the meta, for racing, for dominant level 100 maps, for people pushing for experience in order to get level 100, we are most likely going to see rotas of particular unique maps that are highly valuable in their experience gained and in their layouts, pushed at the max possible level. There's some other ways that you could think about this. You could think of Adziri's Vaults as being a tier 16 now. Will that change the drop rate of what's actually in there or not? You could think of other various unique maps that maybe were a pain in the butt to complete at the previous tiers that they were at, and maybe now you drop them down, like Hall of Grandmasters. Imagine if you could potentially somehow get Hall of Grandmasters really low as a tier, or it could be that it only goes up, which means imagine trying to do a souped up Hall of Grandmasters at tier 16. that could be ridiculous. Anyway, so lots of different things in terms of combinations for mapping, for farming, and of course divination card farming is going to be very, very different because we're not going to be able to target farm and de-shape our atlas, or what used to be known as simply shaping your atlas, but we're no longer going to be able to uncomplete maps through unshaping orbs and cartographer seals anymore, and so that's going to change a lot of the way how people target farm divination cards. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what the divination card market does over the next year, because I think this endgame change is probably the single biggest overarching change to divination cards since divination cards were introduced. You've always been able to target farm them in specific areas, and yes, we're now going to be able to target farm in specific regions, but those regions aren't the same as target farming, 100 maps of the same thing. So while it's still true that you'll be able to go out and purchase a whole bunch of bulk maps from somebody else if you really want to target farm a divination card, it'll be much, much tougher to sustain it. And we saw this all over the last year, whether or not that was people sustaining glacier maps in order to run the Legion mechanic, or whether that was people sustaining burial chambers in order to farm doctor's cards. So we're going to see a whole massive shift in terms of the meta and in terms of the maps. It's going to be a big, big shakeup to the end game. That's at least my thoughts. But feel free to drop me a comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts will be with all of these various changes that are coming to the Conquerors of the Atlas. And I hope this year, this expansion, Conquerors of the Atlas, is a time when a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.